Jeff Gordon is number one.
The winner is Jeff Gordon.
Championship goes to Jeff Gordon.
All right, man. Good job. Good
And
job,
that's your
Dil-
show, everybody.
Yeah.
Man.
All right, take care.
Dillner with the intro. That's a good one, and it needs to be good because we got awesome guests. Jeff, we got so much to unpack here. This is going to be a lot of fun for me.
Well, I appreciate you taking me back. That takes me back to Vallejo, my upbringing. You know, a little hip hop action there, a little beat.
This is you.
Gets
This
me
is,
in the mood.
Dillner knows you.
Don't break dance like
No,
that
no,
one
no,
time,
no.
okay?
I'm
None
done
of
with
that.
Yeah, no, my body doesn't do that anymore.
Well, go ahead, Dale.
Yeah, I don't even know where to get started. So, you know, the first time I heard your name, I was watching. There was a great show called Thursday Night Thunder.
Yes.
And they would show traditionally the races at IRP, Indianapolis Raceway Park, and sprint cars on asphalt. It was an incredible show, and I know that a lot of people in our world, in the stock car world, watched it. But that's the first time I ever saw you. And I know that you've been racing forever, but I've always been kind of curious. Back then, it was traditional for most of those guys that ran sprint cars to go into open wheel.
Mm-hmm.
And you went into stock cars. Now, how does that happen? How does that conversation happen? Or was there a point where you had to make a decision? Or was stock cars always the path?
Yeah, it's so interesting that being here with you on this subject right now, because this Hall of Fame thing is around the corner in February, and so when you start thinking about Hall of Fame and having to give that dreaded speech at the Hall of Fame, and I start sweating thinking about it right now. But it takes me back, and I start following the path of the key moments in my life, my career, that got me to NASCAR. And Thursday Night Thunder was one of them. And you wouldn't have traditionally thought that would have been the path. And I can tell you, that was not my intention at all. I mean, I don't want to go too far back, but we moved to Indiana. My stepfather and my mom moved to Indiana because I was racing sprint cars. I was racing them at a young age, and Indiana, Ohio was pretty cool and open to letting a young kid like myself, and there was a couple others that were racing. And all of a sudden, it became my life, man. All I wanted to do was race these cars, and that was when I started racing professionally, where you go to the pay window and they give you a few $100 if you did okay, And but you have to understand. So it's funny you mentioned this because I wasn't thinking NASCAR at all. Actually, I was thinking World of Outlaw sprint cars. I wanted to be a World of Outlaw sprint car driver. Oh, absolutely. I mean, like, my heroes were Steve Kinzer, Doug Wolfgang, and I got to race with those guys when I was like 14. It was insane. But I realized, and I was, kind of a scrawny kid, I realized that I don't know if I'm going to be a professional World of Outlaw driver. I could be a good sprint car driver, talking about the wing and stuff like that. Because physically, man, those cars were tough. And so there's a few races, where I was fast and I fell out of the seat a little bit. And I just was like, man, I'm going to have to step up my game here big time. And I never was, maybe once or twice I was in the kind of equipment that I thought was competitive with those guys. And I finished top 2 or 3 in a couple World of Outlaw races at tracks that I knew really, really well. So anyway, I get this ride with this awesome team that I'm like, this is my break, man. This is going to do it. And I don't know if I just felt the pressure, if I just didn't have what it took, but I started wrecking the hell out of this thing and costing this car owner a lot of money. And it was a big operation. And we were racing All-Star in World of Outlaws. And so I guess I was probably 16, 17. I knew I was still in high school at this time. And I got fired. And it just so happened right after I got fired, somebody, my stepdad, who was in the racing business, and he said, listen, Bob East, this guy that builds midgets, he wants you to get in one of his midgets, and he's got this guy he wants you to meet, and you might be able to get a ride, but it would probably be on pavement. And I'm like, pavement, man? All I've ever done was dirt. I don't know pavement at all. And it was so we anyway went to this race, met this guy. He had just fired his driver. I was looking for a job, and he was getting this new beast chassis. And the next thing I know, I'm getting asked to drive the car, putting my seat in it, And in May, we go to what was the night before the 500, which was a big midget race at IRP, and it was live on ESPN. And I went, new track record, won my heat race, won the race, just dominated.
And this is what you're talking about. This is where you noticed him in those Thursday nights?
And then that turned into a weekly. It was a weekly. That was actually the RC Cola one. And then the year after that was the white Diet Pepsi car. And we won everything. Man, everything.
He did.
And I remember, so there's a guy named Larry Newber that I'm sure you're familiar with that used to broadcast your dad's races for ESPN in the booth. And he was, he didn't do a lot of stuff with that at this time, but he did do these Thursday Night Thunder and Saturday Night Thunder, which it turned into races. And he loved NASCAR. And so he was trying to help me get my foot in the door some IndyCar teams. But, man, it was like, where's the money? Where's the money? We're not hiring American dirt track drivers right now. We're hiring people from South America, people from Europe who are road racers. And I think my dreams of being an IndyCar driver got crushed around that time because it really was no doors opening up for a guy unless he's bringing a bunch of money. And so because of that, Larry said, well, the only thing I know to do is knock some doors down in North Carolina for NASCAR. And of all things, this blows my mind, and I know we're getting way off track, or getting too deep into the weeds on this one, but nobody gets anything going for them if they went to Buck Baker driving school or one of these Richard Petty driving schools.
This is exactly the kind of weeds we like to get into.
Yeah.
It is.
So I go down there that Larry set up through ESPN. They brought some cameras and said, okay, we're going to film Jeff taking this school and pursuing NASCAR. Okay, I hadn't met anybody. I had not been to anybody and nothing. Right. I land in Charlotte, go to Rockingham, and I'm out there driving these school cars. Right? I'm like, man, this is cool. I like this track. I like to go fast. And the cars, even though they're school cars, they got after a little bit better because it was a smaller track. And there's this guy with this Busch Grand National car making laps around there. And I'm like, what's that? Now, he's not part of the school, separate. And whatever, somebody said, Buck Baker, Jeff Gordon, I meet Buck. I'm like, what's that? And he said, oh, that's, this guy that's going to race some Busch Grand National races. You should meet him. I'm like, great. And all of a sudden, the next day, I show up, and Buck says, hey, he says it's okay if you want to drive his car. I'm like, okay. Now, this guy, Hugh Connerty, which we'll invite him to the Hall of Fame because this guy did a lot. Yeah, this is it right here.
This is that intersection of life right here.
And now, I'm not going to put him down, but he's a larger man than I was. I was pretty scrawny, and we had to stuff all these pillows. You know how it is. Somebody gives you a ride. I had the seatbelts probably had a gap of about 6 inches on it. I didn't care. I was like, whatever it took to get in this car because it was an actual real race car.
Right.
And I got in there and I hauled ass for 10, 15 laps or something like that. It wasn't much, just a few laps. Hauled ass, got out of it. And everybody's like, oh, man, you did really good, really good. And Hugh came over to me, he goes, we need to talk. And I was like, okay. So he said, let's go to lunch. So go to lunch, and he goes, man, I realized in that moment watching you go around the track, I don't belong in this car. You were second faster than I was, and I probably need to do something a little different here. I'm having fun, but I don't need to go race it. But I'm scheduled to do 3 races at the end of this year. Would you like to drive it? I'm like, hell yeah. I didn't know him, his car, nothing. But I'm like, yes, I do. I know, it's insane. And come to find out, that was Leo Jackson's son-in-law. And he knew Andy Petrie. Andy Petrie knew Ray Evernham, blah, 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 all this stuff. Steve Barkdahl was at his shop. And all of a sudden, I'm going to the test, my first test in Charlotte, just a few months after that, and Ray Evernham is the crew chief.
Wow.
So that's how insane that deal was.
This is the white.
That's that white 67 Outback
car.
Steakhouse car.
Yeah.
So I wasn't really going to be a NASCAR driver or pursuing it. It just happened.
You just went to school.
Yeah.
This is what happens when you go to school.
I graduated.
Yeah, you graduated.
It's one of the few times I graduated.
But how do you get the opportunity to go get in that car at Rockingham and not anybody else? Like,
Because we brought some TV cameras, I believe. We had ESPN's backing because they wanted to do a feature for Thursday Night Thunder or Saturday Night Thunder, I think, at that time. It was Thursday night, and then it moved to Saturday night, which was a mistake in my opinion. But then, because we had the cameras, I think Buck,
You're
so
like, with the cameras, come get in the car.
There was one other race car driver, like a late model driver that was there, and I don't know, for whatever reason, Buck singled me out.
So you go to, I remember at Rockingham, you sat on either an outside pole or.
Dave Mater's on the pole. Yeah. I was on the outside front row.
You guys don't forget anything. Nothing.
No, I forget a lot of but not that one.
Not when somebody wins the pole and you didn't. That's the stuff.
Well, the thing is his name was recognizable from the Thursday Night Thunder, and then when he goes to Rockingham in that car, everybody knew that wasn't a good car, or that wasn't a top car. That was kind of a piecemeal effort, and he goes to the racetrack and sits on the outside pole, and that was a bit like, oh man, this guy could be the deal, and there weren't a lot of surprises back then, It was always the same old people, and so here's this new guy that wasn't a stock car racer, and I don't even remember did you run all three of those races? Because I don't remember the other two. But I remember.
Well, you might not remember me in Rockingham after lap 23
I know.
either.
He ran good though. He was in the top 5. And
I was so loose. I kept telling him we got to free the. How Rockingham you get real tight getting down the center 1 and 2. So I kept going free the car up. And I'm coming from open wheel cars running 40 lap races, and so. We freed the car up, and they dropped the green, and this thing was crazy loose. And I held on to it for 23 laps, and then I spun out. So that actually wasn't the first race. The first race was actually at Charlotte. Yep. We tested at Charlotte, and we were fast. We were really fast. And we went, and qualifying got rained out, so they had that hooligan race. Remember that thing? And in that race, of all people, I chopped down on Randy Baker, who was one of my instructors, Buck Baker. And I don't want to say I spun myself or he spun me, but I wrecked. Yeah. And so that ended that race weekend. And then we went to Rockingham outside front row. And then we went to Martinsville, I think, and blew up. Yeah. So that was it. Yeah. So it was my one shot, and it opened up enough doors.
So that one, I mean, what was the race? What was it that got you that next opportunity with Bill Davis?
Okay. So, I love all that. I mean, because I'm so reliving all this
We're
right now.
We're helping you for your speech right now, by the way.
So, all right. So, obviously, some things happened with my phone ringing with other sprint car and midget opportunities, even though I was in a good place there with Raleigh Helmling, the midget. But I got this call one day, and it was, hey, you need to call Lee Morse. And Lee Morse ran the Ford performance and auto racing part for the NASCAR. He said he might have an opportunity for you. And I'm like, cool. So I call Lee, and I get on the phone with him, and he goes, hey, you familiar with Bill Davis Racing? I'm like, no. He goes, well, you remember that Carolina Ford dealer's car? Yes. I knew that car because that thing hauled ass with Mark Martin. And so he said there might be an opportunity there for you, but you got to go test in Rockingham. Now this was like, okay, so I did the race in October, and this was end of October, November, and he said you got to go test in Rockingham in December. I'm like, I'm there. Yeah. And so I went there, and of course the track was fast as can be because it was so cold, and I hauled ass. I mean, I was just like, bah! And the car drove amazing. I knew after that, the car didn't have much power, which Mark always, made up for power his whole career. But man, did he have that thing flying through the corners. So I guess I did well enough in that where Bill Davis. And so I met Bill literally at that test at Rockingham and went, and he, right after that, said, yeah, man, we want to do this. And so he hired me for the next year to go run the full season in Busch Grand National. Luckily, Mark was doing his own deal with Roush and that Winn-Dixie car. So that was why that door opened up.
You ran 1 or 2 years with Bill?
I ran 2. So 91 was my rookie season, then 92 was when we had the Baby Ruth car. And, I mean, we were good that year.
Yeah. No, that was great. I think that was one thing that I always appreciated about you is those 2 years in the Xfinity Series. What was then the Busch Series is you paid your dues. You had to earn that opportunity to get into Rick's car eventually, and this didn't all just happen overnight. You had to prove yourself time and time again.